Hello everyone and welcome to the Great Guild Wars 2 countdown, where slowly we tick down till the launch of Guild Wars 2. I'm tempted to change our numbering to when the pre-release comes out. We'll see though. I definitely want to fill up those past 3. Today the footage in the background continues to come from the Sparrow's journey. I quite enjoyed watching through their stuff, so we might have that for a couple of days. And today the exciting thing about Guild Wars 2 to remember is actually quite a small feature that somebody left a comment and reminded me of myself, and I think it does go under a lot of people's radars. The fact that you can customize the music that you're listening to in the game with Guild Wars 2. So once you've installed it, there's going to be a folder that you can place any music you want into, and then the game will pull from that music while you're running around in game. So you can specifically set it up so that certain music plays while you're going through Guild Wars 2, and that's really cool. So you can have your own battle music and stuff like that. It's really, really awesome, and it's something that a lot of people forget about. So I think that's something that the games usually suffer from as well, especially MMOs that you end up playing for so long, is that eventually people just turn off the music. They either get bored of it or they never liked it in the first place and they have it turned off. Well, now you can actually mix in your own music there, and while that might take away from the flavour of the game, which is honestly why I think a lot of games don't do this, they want the game to just be their vision. They don't want anyone else's music going in there because it won't fit in with the fantasy setting that they've established. But for Guild Wars 2, they've just said, hey, no, you can do it, and even though it might not mesh completely with what's going on the screen, that doesn't matter to you. You just put on whatever music you want to listen to, and I think that might actually encourage, especially me, to continue using the in-game music, and certain tracks will play when I want them to at the right moment. I might even put on, to tell you the truth, the Elder Scrolls music, because it's Jeremy Soule as well, and I just think that that would mesh so nicely, and it's just generally going to be very cool. Actually, another thing that I was going to say for a different video, but actually I'll say today also as well, Guild Wars 2 is using Guild Wars 1 music as well from time to time, which is fantastic. So you get super nostalgic about Guild Wars 1 while playing in the Guild Wars 2 areas that correspond to where it is. It's really, really cool. But anyway, yeah, that's one of the features. You can find a link in the description for more information or further reading if you want. And let's move on to the questions and answers section. So before we start, I just wanted to say in the comments, this sparked off so much discussion. I love it. Yesterday I mentioned this whole thing to do with greens and golds in Guild Wars 1. I said that greens, by the end of the game's lifespan, were considered more common or less valuable to people than golds. Now, that is subjective. It certainly is. And there was a lot of discussion about people saying, oh no, it was this way, it was this way. Certainly when greens first came out, people thought they were much cooler and rarer. And I think it is fair to say that there are more golds in the game than there are greens in the game. So that's fair. But in terms of value, by the end, people certainly did value golds far higher, just because they were moddable, and just because certain items, being gold, was far more important than being a green item. It really was, because it would actually represent something about you having a low chance to find it in a certain area. When we're talking about items that had low requirements but max stats at the same time, especially, golds in those situations were worth a lot, and that's just something greens never had. I stick by the fact that greens were worth less, like they're perceived to be less valuable by the end of Guild Wars 1. I stick by that mainly because we can clearly see for Guild Wars 2, that's what ArenaNet seem to believe too, because for Guild Wars 2 they've put greens as a lower tier than golds or yellows, so that's what they've gone with, and that's kind of why I like it. But I just loved how much discussion there was. It was fantastic. Also, for discussion, nobody gave me any spotlight ideas, so we're going to do more mechanic stuff. If there's anything you want to know about in the lore, or you'd like to hear me talk about because it's a cool story to you and you know there's a lot of people who won't know, tell me now, because literally we're counting down and this is kind of it. I mean, I'll keep doing daily obviously afterwards, but the topics are going to be different then because the game will be out and I'll have more to say on actual in-game stuff. Also, before the questions and answers, I was kindly linked to an interview that went up very recently on Guild Wars 2 Hub, and if you are interested in listening to what John Peters has to say, who's like one of the lead systems designers, I probably used the wrong term there. Basically, he's responsible for a lot of the skill balance and PvP stuff and all of how that works. There's a 2-part interview that's gone up where he talks a lot about the changes that have been made since the beta weekends, what they're planning to do before release, stuff about professions and mechanics. There are a few interesting points in there. They're still talking about pet AI, which I just find so funny that that's still going on, because that's the oldest damn thing in the book for Guild Wars 2. People saying that ranger pets need better AI. We knew that at the damn conventions, like from the very first Gamescom we saw that, and they've always been saying, oh, we're trying to improve it, and they're still talking about it. So I'm starting to get a little bit skeptical about whether that really will improve massively before release, but hey, fingers crossed, hopefully it will. There's a really cool line in there. He talks quite a bit about how a lot of people didn't like the trait changes that they made, how they made it all tiered, and certain people felt like that was restricting freedom. I'm actually happy with the restrictions of freedoms. I think that people need goals to have, and not everything should be handed to us on a plate. Well, John Peters also talks about those changes, so if you want to hear his justification for why those things have happened, maybe you're upset yourself, then you can see that there too. Also, I thought that my favourite thing that really he talked about, though, was how randomness doesn't break competitive games. Like, competitive games can have a threshold of randomness. There is certainly a point where you've crossed that and it can stop being competitive because it comes down to luck, not skill. But he has this really awesome way of describing how randomness is actually good for competitive games, in their opinion, at ArenaNet, because it creates situations that you have to intelligently react to on the fly. Random situations. It throws curveballs and it stops things becoming stale, which is kind of interesting. There's a lot more in there. There's talk about how he thinks PvP at the moment balances are about 80% at this point, but as you play the game for a certain amount of time, you can certainly see that it becomes more and more unbalanced and you start to notice problems, and they're kind of working on that last bit now, which is kind of cool, and I agree with that. You find that with most games. When you get good at it, at first you might think, oh, this is awesome, you can't see any balance issues, but it's only when you start to get good at it, you start to notice those little changes, and that's what they're talking about here, that they're trying to work on those now, which is pretty cool. I've got two quick questions. The first one is a very quick question. Here's my question. Do you think Doom will be in the game? This is a lore thing. I do think Doom will be in the game. The lore specifically says that we don't actually defeat Doom completely. Like, mainly that's as a justification for the gameplay, in that Guild Wars 1 we can continue repeating an end game area to keep killing this boss. Doom, by the way, is the previous god of death in Guild Wars 1 lore. And the story is that he can keep coming back. As more things are slain in the underworld, the seals continuously weaken and he comes back and he comes back and he comes back. There's also that stuff to do with Mad King Thorn. If that ever continues forward, I'd expect Doom to tie into there somewhere. If we get to go back to the underworld, maybe we'll see Doom like that. Honestly, though, if they do ever add God Realms, which is looking unlikely because Guild Wars 2 isn't a human-centric game anymore, if they do ever add God Realms back like they had in Guild Wars 1, these were end-game areas, by the way, for those of you who don't know, if they do add them back, I'd like to see them do different God Realms rather than the underworld again. And if they did the underworld again, I'd rather we had a different boss at the end. I'd rather it be about something else other than Doom. Though, having said that, he can still very much still be about in lore, definitely. Somebody asked a really quick question here that I thought I should explain, because loads of people said it for some reason. I mentioned auto-looting the other day. You can auto-loot in Guild Wars 2. You just go into the options and you'll find it there, auto-loot. What it does is it simply means that when you walk over to an enemy that's dead on the floor and you can see it's kind of shining, when you press F to activate it, instead of popping up a little window that you then choose what loot you get, it just throws it straight into your inventory and you'll see small icons appear on the bottom right-hand corner of your screen. Honestly, I play with this deliberately, and a few people have said this as well on my footage. I do know that the feature's there, but I deliberately don't turn it on. I actually like that feeling of going up to an enemy and seeing what they've got and deciding what I want to take from it. Now, maybe that might not be the most efficient way to earn gold, but I like to know what's going on and what I'm getting from my enemies. I really do feel like playing with auto loot on. Everything just becomes so automatic. It almost takes the fun out of finding items and picking things up. I don't know. I just like to have it slightly more manual like that. So I do leave it deliberately off for myself, but if you are interested in that, you can just turn it on, and then when you kill an enemy, just hammer the F key, and then once you finish doing your questing or whatever, you go back to a town, you'll just have a bunch of crap in your inventory that you didn't even really know or pay much attention to how it got there, and you'll just sell it all there or find whatever equipment you might have got. So I think it takes a bit of the excitement out, especially with regards to junk items, as I mentioned before. Like, that just becomes so automatic. They may as well just have a single item called junk and then nothing else. Literally, there's no need to have any flavor there. Things become so automatic with just hitting F and then automatically selling all junk. It's just, I don't know, it takes too much away from me, but it's an option, and that's what's cool about it, I suppose. You got people like me that we don't have to turn it on, and then you got everyone else, probably the majority of us, that just want to be super efficient and earn all the money, and that's totally fine, and you can turn that on. But yeah, it does exist. Alright, the question from yesterday, the mechanics question that I got, that I never managed to do, but I can do today, is from no more usernames again. This guy is on fire, literally. He keeps asking questions that I actually find quite interesting. Today he said this: my question pertains to hackers. How do you think Guild Wars 2 will deal with them? I ask because many free-to-play games are plagued with hackers. While not earth-shattering in PvE, one can attempt to avoid them, they do take away some of the fun of the experience. In PvP, however, they completely unbalance and break the system, making it nearly nearly, if not entirely, impossible to play. This is, of course, ignoring economic effects of having illicit items in circulation, and it would be a shame to see such a nice game be made into something so abominable because ArenaNet didn't employ enough anti-hacker software. As an afterthought, too much anti-hacker software can be detrimental to legitimate players. Do you think that they would take it too far to damage their legitimate place? What do you think from what you've seen with Guild Wars 1? Well, there's really three things that I think ArenaNet need to be aware of, and three different things that have varying problems. If you look at Guild Wars 1 anyway, and Guild Wars 2 is very much still built on the back end on the same kind of stuff that Guild Wars 1 had, so we can really draw comparisons here and pretty reasonably guess what Guild Wars 2 is going to be like. First of all, you say hacking. In this way, this is kind of cheating you're talking about. People that hack the game and then give themselves certain items or make sure none of their abilities have recharges anymore so they can just spam stupid utility skills and just go nuts and kill everything. This is more hacking the actual game and cheating. That never, it might have happened, but it would have been very, very, very rare. In all my 6,000 hours now of playing Guild Wars 1, I never once experienced anyone ever getting through like that and managed to cheat or hack. You're connected to the server to play the game. ArenaNet were very good. If anyone ever did try it, they were very, very good at just finding it straight away and just banning the people. The closest I ever found to this was on YouTube. When I was first starting out my LP, I was watching a lot of the Guild Wars 1 stuff that was going on, of which there was a bit more back then. The most I ever saw was someone on YouTube had, and his videos have been pulled now, trust me, I tried to find him a while ago. He'd managed to get like a free cam mod. He'd like hacked the game and made it so that he had like a free cam and he could just move around. And it was actually on the live servers, because what he was doing was going into some of the populated cities like Kamadan, Julavistan, and his camera wasn't connected to his character, and he was just moving the camera around, and he was going all over the place, and he was completely out of the boundaries of the maps. Like one of the places he went to in Xingje Island, he moved the camera like miles and miles off of this cliff to the north, where there was this small village that you could always see way off in the distance, but because he'd like hacked his way, he kind of moved that camera and he found like these crazy pigs spazzing out miles and miles away where players would never find them, which were really interesting and cool videos, but that was the worst I'd ever seen, and he only put out like 2 videos and they're not there anymore. I'm almost 100% sure they're not there anymore, so I'm guessing he was probably caught by ArenaNet very quickly, or he got bored of the project, but that was the most I ever saw, and that wasn't even in-game. I never saw anyone cheating, and I'm not expecting to see it in Guild Wars 2. I reckon they'll be very good at it. Also, what you're talking about, the kind of measures, I don't know what measures they're using to stop people from hacking. I don't know how they're detecting it or anything like that, but maybe that's a good thing. Maybe I shouldn't know that, because it's not one of these games where you turn it on and there's this stupid thing that appears in the top corner that says, oh, this is anti-hack software, blah, blah, blah. Never happened with Guild Wars 1, and it's not happening with Guild Wars 2, so I think it's a good thing that I don't know how that's going, because clearly whatever they're doing is working, and it's not interfering with me at all, so I'm sure that the same will happen with Guild Wars 2. However, that's cheating, hacking. There were problems, though, with Guild Wars 2. Obviously, there's also ways to cheat using exploits. Any MMO is going to get that. They need to iron as many of them out with beta. There were some crazy exploits that happened in Guild Wars 1's time, but ArenaNet were pretty quick to crack down on them. For example, there's 2, really, and they were both related to the same thing. So, when mini-pets were first announced for Guild Wars 2, when mini-pets first happened, exactly a year after the game's launch, for that first day, or a few hours after the update went live, what happened was characters that were a year old would get a present dropped straight into their inventory, which they could open for a mini pet. However, there was a problem for those first few hours. If you made a new character, the game would think, oh right, this was a character that was made on this date, because obviously it was that day, but it would think that it was a year old already, and you just make new characters and get all the birthday presents, and you could just spam them and get all the minis. For that, ArenaNet, that was one of the very, very rare times that ArenaNet ever did like a massive rollback across like the board. It was pretty crazy. They did that a couple of times too, like when Factions came out, they did a rollback on materials and stuff. But the other main exploit, and there were a lot as time went along, but the other one that gained a lot of infamy was at the end of Nightfall, when they added the Domain of Anguish. Some people found their way to trick into like a secret dev outpost area by going into the Domain of Anguish and then going to the guild hall and then porting back, and they'd go into like this hidden place, and from here you could duplicate items that were in your inventory. And the game at that point had a lot of mini pets that were exclusive rare things, and there was only a limited number of them in the game, and everybody just started duplicating them and going nuts, and ArenaNet found out, and anyone that had ever had that outpost unlocked, even if they were just like in the party and the party leader went there and they kind of got moved by proxy, which is what a lot of people claimed when they got their accounts banned. They were like, oh, it was just an accident. But every single person that did it got banned just straight up, and that's just what happened there. So that was another massive exploit. Having said that, they never rolled the servers back at that point. So everyone that duplicated loads of stuff and then sold it on before their account was banned, these rare items, they were now flushed out into the economy, and it's actually impossible to know now for a lot of those rare mini pets and those rare items how many exactly there are there because of this exploit. And if you look at any page on the wiki, it will always have that clause there. It will say we don't know anymore because of this exploit. It was kind of a big thing. It was like this whole extra outpost. Like, it was pretty cool. But that was another one that really springs to mind. There have been other little exploits and stuff, and I'm sure people have been banned all over the shop. There are some harmless exploits that people did. I used to do an exploit where you could load into, hit a loading screen to enter an instance, and then suspend all the CPU threads on that actual client. And if you were running multiple clients at the same time, you could then use another account to complete the mission or whatever it was, the instance. And then you could resume the previous one that was loading into the area, and you could load into a zone after the instance had been completed, and you can go and wander around in areas after cutscenes had been done, and like alliance battles, you could load in and the score would just keep rising up and up and up and up, but they never allowed you to get anything, and it never allowed you to get anything extra, so it was not a main problem. But yeah, there were small exploits, and there will be exploits in Guild Wars 2, especially at the launch. ArenaNet, though, recently have begun to implement back-end stuff that allows them to do rollbacks just on an individual character basis, which never existed for Guild Wars 1, and that was one of the main reasons why people said, oh hey, this is a subscription fee free game and this is kind of the price you pay. They don't have many facilities to help you out if there are going to be problems like you getting hacked. Which brings me on to my last thing. You mentioned hacking as in cheating. That doesn't really happen, but Guild Wars 1 did have a massive problem eventually with accounts being hacked. And as I say, for a long time in Guild Wars 1, ArenaNet had no way to return your characters or your items or anything to you. So if you got hacked, which, by the way, I am still of the impression, and I'm sure there will be a few of you out there that say, oh no, I didn't do anything wrong. I do think it's just people that buy gold. 99% of the time, it's people that have bought gold, and you can eventually weasel it out of them, and that's why they got hacked. Or it's people that have just randomly told other people their password. To be honest, I don't have much sympathy for people like that, even though I do know there is definitely a risk of being hacked. There was, in Guild Wars 1, a risk, even if you weren't doing anything wrong. NCSoft actually run a lot of that kind of back-end stuff to do with your accounts and passwords and stuff. If you've linked your Guild Wars 1 account for a while to your NCSoft Master account, which you might have done for microtransactions and stuff, there was actually a security flaw with NCSoft, and this isn't to do with ArenaNet or Guild Wars 2 necessarily, but just NCSoft at the time, where you would log into your NCSoft account and the system would just randomly log you into someone else and give you full access to all their passwords and everything. So people were getting hacked for doing nothing wrong. It was just because NCSoft had an absolutely ridiculous system in place, and that was a problem for Guild Wars 1 for a long time because there weren't like individual rollbacks. However, that's now been implemented, and even should NCSoft be completely stupid again, which I doubt they will be in the first place, but if they do, ArenaNet do have the means now to actually fix that and sort it out. And I guess that's the one nice thing that's come out of having microtransactions in the game. I guess maybe this is what a bit of money's come on, and that's not only going to be a feature in Guild Wars 2, but it was moved backwards into Guild Wars 1 as well. So I don't have any fears. I mean, I played Guild Wars 1 for a lot, and I never had any problems myself. Yeah, there are going to be things. Mainly it's going to be exploits. People will find them, but that's to be expected. I don't think anyone's kidding themselves and expecting an MMO to launch without these things there. They will be there, but as far as people cheating, especially in PvP and stuff, I know that it would be a big problem. It never happened in Guild Wars 1, not in my experience, and that was a lot of hours. So, I mean, you'll have to take my word for it. There probably will be stories out there of some stuff like that happening, but it's been few and far between. I can say that much. I doubt many people got away with it, and if they did, they would certainly be very quiet about it. I know I would be. But there you go, guys. That was a great Guild Wars 2 countdown for today. Thanks very much again to the Sparrow's Journey. Is that right? Yes, it was. Thanks very much to the Sparrow's Journey for the footage in the background, and I will see you all tomorrow. Tell me about Spotlights. Jeez. Okay, cool. See you next time, everyone.